Hi, my name is Charles Malki, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants, and today we're going to be pruning this standard Eureka lemon tree that's here behind me. You can see how productive it is, but it's now measuring somewhere between 15 to 20 feet tall in 3 short years. Check that out. In this lesson, we're going to discuss 5 helpful tips, and the first one is starting off with, do I prune my citrus? There's a lot of research out there that recommends not to prune your citrus, and that citrus should be more free growing, and that the only reason to prune your citrus tree would be, to basically manage a branch that's growing in the wrong direction. But there's other value other than that, and in my opinion, it's important to prune your citrus back annually, at least by 5 to 10% per year, for the purpose of specifically making sure that the base is stronger and larger than the top. You don't want the top of the plant and the base of the plant to be equal to one another. But by pruning at least 5 to 10% off the top, you're gonna have a base that'll better support the top of the plant and also result in a better quality fruit on the plant as well. Now, citrus come in all sorts of sizes, from dwarf, as you can see here in this pot. I've got a dwarf Meyer, which is also known as the sweet lemon variety, and this year has been in the container for about 3 years. So you can see within, in 3 years, I still have a plant measuring only about a foot, maybe 1.5 feet tall, compared to my standard variety of citrus, as you can see here, measuring as much as 20 and still growing. To my left here is a semi-dwarf navel orange tree. If you check this out over here, you can see this here is about 2.5 going on to 3 years as well. We can see the trunk, you can see the shape of it, which we're going to discuss shortly, but very healthy. Just started producing fruit this last winter, just a few pieces, but we're expecting several dozen fruit this year. So the best time to prune your citrus, and we've discussed this in the past, about a year ago in fact, where we harvest the lemons off of our sweet Meyer lemon variety citrus that we have in the backyard. We harvested the fruit, and then immediately we'll also then prune the plant back as well. So the best time for accomplishing your major pruning of your citrus is going to be after the harvest of the fruit, as well as after your last chance of frost is passed. Somewhere in that window and before your citrus go into the main bloom that's going to support the main fruit. Even on a lot of these citrus that are year-round, including this Eureka lemon tree, it's important to get the timing right so that you end up harvesting and yielding the maximum amount of fruit, which typically for most citrus will be winter time. So it's important to get the timing right in order to maximize and not lose on the maximum yield of fruit you can enjoy for that year. Here we are now in the middle of April, and we are going to be pruning the Eureka lemon tree now. Again, ideally this should have been done at least about a month or 2 ago, as our last chance of frost here in Los Angeles, California, passed at the end of January. So February would have been the ideal month to do this, but I'm just demonstrating this for you. And in regards to major pruning is typically defined as pruning branches that are older than 2 to 3 years old. In this demonstration, all of the pruning we're doing are going to be on branches that are less than 1 year. Believe it or not, all of those branches that you see that are that tall are less than a year old. We're going to be bringing it down with the objective of bringing the fruit and the reach all within reach, rather than having fruit that are all without, that are not within reach. So that is the objective. Right now the tree is measuring about 15 to 20 feet tall. The goal is to bring it down to about 8 to 10 feet. So we're going to be reducing the height by about 50%, and I'm going to do so in a very natural looking way, so it doesn't look like I've completely chopped at it. And we're going to be doing that lesson together momentarily. The other important lesson I want to share with you is the shape of the citrus. And I told you that I really appreciate the shape of the semi-dwarf navel orange that I've got over here. If you take a look real quick, and then we'll come back. So I brought with me for demonstration this umbrella. The goal when shaping your trees, and this applies for citrus as well as many other trees, is to make sure you've got a canopy that's going to be shading the underlying trunk and underlying branches from the sun, as too much sun exposure can harm your trees in a very negative way. I'll actually share a few video links towards the back of this where we visited a property where there was 3rd-degree citrus burns on an orange tree. We visited even some fig trees that suffered 3rd-degree burns. And 3rd-degree burns are basically where your citrus tree are out in the sun on these now, not 12, but now approaching 13 and even 14 hours of sun in the spring and summer. And what ends up happening is that the tree's bark ends up burning with that much exposure to light. It's important that the upper canopy of the plant shade and keep cool the underlying branches and tree trunk. And if they're exposed again for prolonged periods of time, what can happen is your first degree burn is a discoloration to the outer bark. A second degree burn is now damage to the underlying cambium layers, and that's the underlying part of the bark that transports the waters and sugars underneath the bark. And then after that, your third degree burn is the underlying supporting wood that's basically holding the tree in place. So to avoid that damage, what we've done to all of these citrus trees is that we've applied the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard product, which we're going to be reviewing towards the end. And as you can see here, we basically coated the plant all the way from the base up to the lower branches. So the protection is basically from this point down. So we just discussed the umbrella being the ideal shape. Well, let's take a look now at the Eureka lemon tree. If you come in a little closer, you can see that these branches have all arched. It's actually created the arch due to the weight of these fruit that it's holding. So all of those higher branches, we're going to see as we bring them down, actually are supporting a lot of fruit that'll eventually bring these branches down. If you stay there and take a look here, it's doing exactly the same thing. See, the branches are coming up and they're coming down under the weight of all of these fruit. It's quite spectacular, and the pattern will just continue repeating itself. Eventually what's going to happen is that the tree is going to create its own canopy and ultimately shade all of this exposed bark. And as you can see, there's still quite a bit of sunlight that's coming in, and once we open the upper canopy, there's going to be even more light into the underlying trunk and lower branches, all of which need to be protected. And now we're going to start off with our pruning lesson, so let's get started. So as I was walking around the standard Eureka lemon tree, I was examining to see all the lower branches that I'm going to preserve and to kind of determine which of the branches that are going directly straight up we're going to bring down, so that a lot of the resources within the plant can be dedicated to those underlying branches and work on fruit production at a lower level. However, the other objective as well, aside from pruning, is to consider bending and training some of the branches to create that open canopy. And I found a branch that I'd actually like to preserve rather than prune. And one of the things you can consider doing is actually shaping and bending the branches that are between year 1 and year 3 into the right direction, so that it can create that open canopy that will accomplish the goals of having a nice open, and again, you're looking to make sure that none of the branches are also crossing. You want to have a very open structure with a nice open canopy that'll also provide shade to the underlying trunk and branches, as we mentioned earlier. So what we're going to do is, I found one of the branches way up there, one of the tallest ones, that we're going to bend in position and basically fill in this entire area that's right over my head, simply by putting a stake into the ground. So we're going to do this right now. So the goal here is to simply take this branch, which has quite a few lemons on the end of it as well, and that's not what we're looking for is the fruit, but I'm just looking at the direction of the branch, and I can bend it right in here in this position to fill in this part of the canopy and still keep the plant within about 8 feet. We'll now go with our twine. When tying a knot, make sure you put the knot against the stake and not against the tree. And here we go. So again, you can see that we placed and positioned the knot against the stake. We didn't put any knots against the stem so as not to constrict the underlying cambium tissues and the flow of the waters and sugars within the plant. And now within the next 6 to 12 months, that branch will be permanently in that position, and the tree structure will be based off of, or at least for this section, off of this branch that we've decided to keep, and now train the resulting branches and structure off of that. Now with that done, what we're going to do is start pruning around the tree. Follow me. So our first lesson is to bring the height down. So if you can come and follow me, I want to share with you how we're going to hopefully bring this down. The first thing, and again, even though we've got quite a bit of fruit here, and I know this is going to be hard to see, we're going to be taking it off. And keep this in mind. By pruning this back, it's going to be that much more resources and energy that's coming out of the plant that's going to support the remaining fruit, resulting in a better quality and even larger size fruit by removing all of this excess fruit. It's also a good practice, again, to also thin fruit. So if there was large clusters, as there are in other parts, and we'll get to that, we can do that right now. If you come in a little closer, you can see here, we've got 3 lemons. It wouldn't be a bad idea to remove one of them so as more energy can go into the other 2. Well, let's continue on now. If you come in this direction here, you'll see what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring this entire branch back to this next smaller branch. And I'm hoping you can follow this fork in the branch that comes up to this point over here. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cut at an angle and prune. And now we've just shortened this branch like so. And we're gonna continue this pattern coming down. You're fortunate when you actually have a small branch that's coming out at a shorter distance. I can continue even bringing this back further. If you can follow me again, there's another fork in the branch, which is right here. There's another little branch that we can cut to so that all the energy and resources that are coming from the branch can go into this branch, or we can go back even further to this branch over here and prune like so. And now we've brought it back another 1.5 feet. We just removed all of this, tightening the plant and keeping it away from our walkway that's over here. What we're gonna do now with this branch is we're gonna bring it down. You're gonna have the option now, we're bringing it down all the way to the source where it's coming, or you'll have the option to also prune it at one of these leaf buds. And each one of these leaf buds, if I prune it, I'm gonna show you an example on the other side, but once you prune it, it's gonna encourage each of these buds at the base of the leaf to also produce branches as well. So we'll just prune like so. And we can do the same thing here as well. And I'm basically following the leaf down, trying to stay in the general area. And depending on which leaf I prune from, if we take a look here, if I prune it there, then we're gonna get branches that are gonna go out in that direction. If I prune over here, it's gonna result in branches going out in this direction. So you're always, like when you're on this side of the plant, let's say we're on the left side, you're gonna be looking for leaves that'll hopefully push branches in the left direction and away from the center. But at this point, let's just prune, and then we'll moderate and select the branches accordingly as they come out. And so here we go. If we've got too many branches, and this is a decision we've got to make, you can narrow this group of 4 branches that are coming out to only 3 by simply pulling one out. So now you can take a look. In this area, we've simply brought this entire height out, and we brought it down. My reach is 8 feet, so we're now down to about 6.5 to 7 feet tall, and I've got lemons. I'm gonna be continuing this pattern throughout. Maybe you can see a couple more as we go through here. If you wanna follow, here we go. I would typically come down, and again, you can see here's a nice cluster of lemons. If I were to keep it, it's a good practice to select from the 4, which one are your best 3, here's a good one and a good one. This one here has some scar tissues. It's also got a little deformed shape. You would typically prune this one out, maybe even take out a second, so that all the resources are focused on just those 2. But anyways, we're gonna bring this one down as well. Again, the goal is we're gonna keep most of this plant within the height of about 6 to 8 feet. So with that being said, let's follow this down. And again, we can go down to where the next branch is, which is over here. But again, being that this is too low for me, and being I wanna match it to what I've done over here, I'm gonna try to go across, and I'm gonna prune it similarly at this junction right there. So we're gonna have this branch, and you can see over here, we've got all of these new buds that are forming flowers, and ultimately these flowers will get more developed, creating little tiny fruit, and then we're gonna have some more fruit clusters like so. And here's even some other smaller fruit as well. Right there. And another one right behind it. And another one right in front of it. So anyways, a highly productive tree. The Eureka lemon is a lot of fun to grow. Here's another quick tip is when you've got branches that again are growing towards the center of the vase, again the goal and the objective with your citrus tree is to have branches that are going from the center out. But here we got a branch that's coming from the out, the branch on going in the out direction that's coming back in towards the center. That's this branch over here. It may look good, but it's not an ideal shape for maximizing the amount of light and exposure to the leaves that'll ultimately support the maximum amount of fruit. So this branch is coming out. And with this one, what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut it back all the way to the branch and the source that it came from. So if you come in a little closer, you can see how close we're gonna be pruning this branch out. So here we go with our pruners, and we're gonna come in here and prune it like so. Another example, here we are. You can see, and here's I guess an example, we don't have to go on the other side. You can see that we pruned this tip probably about a month or two ago, and since then it's created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new branches. So we've got all of these branches. You can see it's going to be a lot more compact. It's going to have a lot more branches, a lot more opportunity for more flowers, and ultimately supporting more fruit at a much reduced height. One other important tip. A lot of you ask also like how low can I go? Typically with a standard variety, whether it's citrus or any other fruit tree, you can typically bring it down safely to a semi-standard or a semi-dwarf height. So a plant that would naturally grow 15 to 25 feet tall being standard can easily be brought down to about 8 to 12 feet, which would be more of a semi-standard size tree. And then if it were a semi-standard tree, you can easily bring that down to a dwarf size of about 3 to 6 feet. So if you're dealing with standards, you can bring it down to semi-standard, from semi-standard down to about a dwarf height. If you try taking the standard size tree and pushing it down to a dwarf height, then all you're going to end up is with a very stressed tree that all it's going to want to do is try to grow. The goal is you want to make sure that the standard tree has a standard amount of branches and basically a standard number of leaves to then support fruit. If you bring it back too far, it'll throw it into shock where all it will want to do is push new growth at the expense of fruiting and sometimes at all. So again, this is going to be a safe height, even though it looks pretty dramatic. And even though I gave you that rule at the beginning, a minimum of 5 to 10%. But here what we're doing is we're beginning the training process of this particular citrus within our garden to train it to be within that range of about 8 to 10 feet tall. Let me continue. So here we are. Check out all of these fruit that we inadvertently removed in pruning this tree behind me. There's still one more cut we're gonna make, but all of these fruit will still be recycled. We'll squeeze what we can out of them, flavor water. We'll end up doing something with that. But let's take a look at this last cut, and I'm gonna share with you what we've done within. So with this branch that we bent out of the way, it's now sticking out disproportionately too far. I'm gonna give you a tour all the way around the plant in just a minute. But I'm just gonna shorten that so it matches the rest of the tree. If you come in a little closer, check out what's happening in the under canopy of this tree, which will now have an opportunity to grow better than ever. Check out again all of these little fruit and flowers that never saw the sun. It was always in the shade, and there's fruit here and here and here and here, all along the stem, all along those stems, all under here. I would say in just this vicinity of about 4 square feet, there's at least another 20 to 30 fruit. So when it comes to fruit production, even though I've just cut maybe 50% of the mass, let's say, of the tree, but again, All I've removed were branches that were under 1 year old. I didn't remove any larger branches. If you're gonna cut things that were larger in diameter, let's say about an inch or a half an inch or greater, being 2 to 3 year old wood or older, I would have recommended you wait until after the chance to frost has passed, being here in Los Angeles, the ideal month being February. With that being said, let's take a tour around the tree and then we're gonna discuss one last topic. So you can see here, I measure 6 feet tall. You can see most of the branches and all of the fruit are all now within reach. So here we are. So now let's talk about the Ivory Organics products. If you're coming a little closer to this pamphlet I want to share with you, that's a PDF on the ivoryorganics.com website, which talks about Century's proven methods, one effective and patented formula. I've circled in red a couple of important points that relate to what we're talking about. Whitewashing tree trunks is an old-fashioned but effective method to prevent sun scald of tree bark from bright winter sunshine. Oregon State University. Whitewash young trees routinely at planting, University of California. Whitewash older trees, we can say in this example being this is a 3-year-old citrus tree, if they develop sparse canopies or severely pruned. It looks like we may have severely done a prune job, and it is now more sparse than it was before, so there is a benefit now for whitewashing, which I'll point out momentarily. And then paint the trunk and lower limbs with whitewash to help prevent sunburn and damage from borers, and I'll discuss that. And painting tree trunks with whitewash help repel adult beetles, especially on young trees. So let's now discuss that. The Ivory Organics products, what they are is, I've got these 2 cans. When you take a look at the whitewash products, you'll see some cans are in yellow and other ones that are in blue. The yellow can is the 3-in-1 whitewash protection against summer sunburn and insects and rodents. Both products are for use on your roses, fruit, nut trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs. It's registered material for use in organic agriculture, and again with the label on both of them, it says protects newly installed plants and trees, shields, prune, and damage surfaces. The main difference between the yellow product and the blue product is that the yellow product has these 7 natural garden oils that offer the insect and rodent repellent protections. The castor oil, cinnamon oil, clove oil, garlic oil, peppermint oil, rosemary oil, and spearmint oil, whereas the blue label, which simply reads whitewash instead of 3-in-1 plant guard, is protection against summer sunburn, winter sun scald, which again would be beneficial to apply in this instance as well. The active ingredients in here are garlic powder and cinnamon powder as well. So let's take a look at what the contents are. If you open it up here, so if we take a look at the 3-in-1 yellow label product, what it comes with is the organic base powder, which is here, and it's also available in colors green and brown. This is now color white. And then it comes with this bubble wrap oil vial that contains the 7-in-1, the 7 natural garden oils, and that's right here in this bubble wrap. If you were to open the whitewash formula, so now if we open the whitewash label, it basically comes with what appears to be the same powder. The difference is this has the added garlic and cinnamon powder, and there's no oil vial in here. The advantages of using the oil product is to now protect against this situation. Some of you may remember that we had a branch about a few months ago that was over here that basically broke under the weight of all of the fruit. And so what we did is we basically protected it with the 3-in-1 plant guard color white. Like so. And you can already see the whiteness, but I'll paint it again and I'm going to zoom you guys in so you can see it. But you're basically going to coat that damaged wood. The reason you're going to coat that damaged wood, the reason you're going to want to coat that damaged wood and that exposed surface is, again, to protect it from basically all pests and pathogens from entering that exposed wood. It'll take at least a year, possibly up to 2 years, for that wound to callus over and heal itself. But in the meantime, that layer of Ivory Organics infused with those 7 natural garden oils will repel insects from wanting to penetrate through and ultimately bore into the wood and begin to weaken the integrity of the tree. So here we've just opened the canopy in the middle of April. A lot of growers and orchards across the country will typically prune their plants again in the summer. Once they harvest their fruits, whether they be almonds or peaches or plums or apples or anything else, and they'll prune them one more time after harvest to encourage a few more branches that'll support more flowers the following spring. But when you open that canopy, as we just have, followed by some hot summer days, or even there's some hot spring days where we'll reach into the 90s and even 100s, that can cause significant damage to the underlying tree trunk and branches. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna coat the underlying tree trunk. As you can see, all of these leaves are also now getting sun that otherwise never got sun, as they were always in the shade of the upper branches. But what we're gonna do here is we're gonna basically take the 3-in-1 product and continue coating the lower tree trunk and branches, like so. And you're gonna wanna go all the way down to the base. As you can see, there's quite a bit of light all the way down to the ground level, and we're gonna work our way up. I'm gonna take my time and finish this up afterwards. And the reason you're going to want to do this with the Ivory Organics product instead of using a chemical paint product is, as you can see, if you come in a little closer, if you come around maybe on this side, you can see that eventually the plant is going to continue growing. So this surface over here is coated with the Ivory Organics just now. On this side, I coated it about 6 months ago, and you can see with the application, eventually the product begins to come off, the tree is going to expand, and on average the tree trunk is only going to be there for about a year to as much as 3 years on average, and the tree trunk is going to basically come off the tree, and it's going to replace it with a new layer of bark. All of that paint, if it was chemical paint from your paint store that was attached to that bark, is going to end up, again, if this was chemical paint, in your soil for decades, if not centuries. Chemical paint, if it's designed to be on your house, is designed to last for decades, if not a century or greater. The Ivory Organics product is designed to break down into the elements. Let's even take a look at the inert ingredients. If you take a look over here, and you can see that the base of it is iron oxide, which controls the color, limestone, which is basically a crushed rock that's the consistency of the powder, mica, which is a clay base, milk, using milk proteins to help with the binding within the product, and then silica, which is another word for sand. All of these have been broken down into its elements and crushed very fine and proportionally added in a way that it creates a very strong bond that will last on average on your plants for about a year. If it's young tissue where it's very green and waxy, the adhesion to the tree may be less, but if it's as in this case where the bark is becoming a little bit more porous, the application will last, again, on average a year. Depending on your conditions and weather, it could be closer to 9 months. And again, in drier climates, it can even be longer than a year. So on average, these products are applied and reapplied to your tree once a year. A couple of you have asked about my Ngami Kumquat citrus that we've also done a video on, where we potted it about 2, maybe even 3 years ago. And here it is, and I want to share a couple of points before I give you the overall look. If you come in a little closer, I want to share with you where the graft is. If I can spin this pot here, if you take a look, you can see that there's quite a few suckers happening. It's important as part of your maintenance and management of the citrus trees is to regulate and monitor these and also remove them if your goal is, as it is here, to basically grow your citrus, as in this one, in a tree form. So I've got it in the pot, and I want basically all of the branches on this side, or any of the suckers, to be removed, and I want all of the growth to be about 2 to 3 feet off of the ground level within the pot. What we're going to do here is, and I want to share with you, is the graft union is right here where my finger is, right at this point. If I can spin it, let's turn this pot a little bit more, and a little bit more to get the maximum amount of sunlight on this so I can share with you. If you take a look over here, this is the root stock. From this point down is the root that basically controls the, number one, the height of the variety that's grafted from this point up. So on this rootstock, being it's a standard rootstock, I could have put on here a Eureka lemon, I could have put a Meyer lemon, I could have put some oranges, I could have put some limes, I could have put anything related to the citrus rootstock on top of it and grafted it to create the height plant that I want. If I'm seeking a dwarf tree, then I would graft my Nagami kumquat to a dwarf rootstock and have a dwarf sized plant. If the goal is to have a semi-dwarf citrus tree, then I'm going to be looking for a dwarf rootstock and grafting upon that, or at least looking for a grower that makes semi-dwarf citrus tree by grafting on a semi-dwarf rootstock. And then if I'm looking for standard, as in this case, we went with a standard rootstock and basically they grafted onto it the Nagami kumquat, and here we are. What's happening is I want to share with you on this side is you can take a look, if I can spin it back in a position, you can see here is exposed wood. This is very important to protect it from borers, the beetles, termites, or any other pathogens that may enter this wood or possibly rot this wood, resulting in damage to what I like calling the heart of the tree, being the underlying tree trunk, the lower branches. If there's any damage to this part of the plant, then it'll damage the integrity of the entire plant and affect the entire health of the plant. However, if there's damage at a higher position at the plant, then I can cut at a higher position and recreate another plant without compromising the entire life of the plant. So I always like protecting the heart being defined as the lower tree trunk and the lower branches among the tree. And so what we're going to do is we're going to reapply another coat of IV Organics. Number one is to protect this exposed wood, and secondly, as you can see, as the plant is now expanding, you can see some cracks in the IV Organics from the last application being about 8 to 12 months ago. We're going to reapply. So what I want to share here is the citrus from the rootstock down is something different than the citrus from the rootstock up, being the scion wood or the grafted selected variety of citrus. If you take a look at the leaf structure from below the rootstock, and here's a sucker that's coming off, is not the same as, if you can take a look, this is a trifoliate citrus, meaning 3 leaves, 3 foliate, trifoliate. So this is a trifoliate citrus variety rootstock that they used. We're going to remove it. If I allow this to exist, it's going to take the energy of all of the nutrients and all the benefits that I'm putting into the soil. It's going to go into this undesirable rootstock to the detriment of the selected variety of citrus that we're trying to grow up above. So the first thing I'm going to do before reapplying a coat of the IV Organics to the tree trunk is I'm going to remove any of the underlying suckers, especially if it's coming out of the rootstock. These here, which are right at the union between the rootstock and the grafted variety, I can tell automatically is not the same leaf. This here is the Nagami kumquat leaf. As you can see, the shape of it is significantly different than the rootstock trifoliate citrus. The Nagami kumquat only has 1 leaf pattern compared to this rootstock that has the 3 leaf pattern. So this here is Nagami kumquat, but again, we're going to remove them to encourage all of the nutrients and energy and strength to go and support the upper canopy, and that the tree doesn't create a lazy habit of supporting lower branching to the detriment of the upper branching and the design and the structure we're looking for. So we're just removing all of these like so. And we've just cleaned that all up. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take our 3-in-1 IV Organics, color green, and let's just reapply another coat to get this off to an excellent protective start for another warm and sunny spring and summer here in sunny Southern California. And again, I already mentioned this at the start, is that most importantly, we want to make sure we fill that in to keep any disease and pathogens and pests out of it. One other important thing, and for those of you that have done your research, there's a lot of research that says not to apply paint and not to apply tar to those wounds. And the reason is latex paint, being latex, creates a waterproof barrier. Tar, another waterproof barrier, will result in rot to anything that you coat. This product, as you can see, when you apply it, is very porous and dry and allows moisture to pass through. So again, a very different product than latex paint and tar. And again, the main point as well is that this being organic will break down over the course of about a year, maximum 2, whereas tar and latex paint are designed to last for decades. And as, again, the bark sheds, which is a natural process, you don't want to result in a soil that has tar and latex paint in it. So let me show you now the standard Nagami Kumquat finished results. If you take a look, you can see all of this new growth being, here we are now, the middle of April. It's pushing out all of this new growth all over the top. We removed all of the underlying suckers. This is what the fruit looks like if you want to take a look. This is close to what the size is. It could be about twice as big as well. I've got right next to it over here a egg mass from a praying mantis. That's the reason I left the fruit, was to remind myself where that well, pretty much that nest is. And now take a look. We've just coated the Nagami Kumquat with the Ivory Organics color green. And again, just a reminder, it's also available in colors brown too. Because all of these underlying branches and trunk, as we said, the heart of the tree is defined as the tree trunk and all of those lower branches. As long as we protect that, if there's any branches in the upper canopy that get damaged, we can simply prune it and a new branch will come out of the heart. But all of these underlying leaves and smaller stems have never been in the sun, and to eliminate the risk of any sun stress to those, you can take a product like this, which is the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard Ready to Use spray, where you can also use the can and follow the directions on the back to basically take the brush-on solution and turn it into a foliar spray. But this one here is the ready to use. You'd simply spray it even on all those harder to reach branches and stems, like this young branch over here. We can simply spray even on the young fruit that, again, have never been in the sun. This will offer protection. As you can see, there's a nice light white film on the fruit, on the leaves, and even on these tender young leaves as well, which when it dries leaves a very light and white film to basically repel some of that excess sunlight with the heat to keep the plant much cooler. Hence the name, We Grow Cool Plants. So in conclusion, I just want to thank the many garden enthusiasts out there that have used the Ivory Organics products in their garden, and I am giving credit to all of you in this video by basically placing cards throughout the video of your videos where you've shared your experiences, as well as I'm going to put 4 different YouTube channels, 4 different YouTube gardening channels that have used the Ivory Organics products in different ways to benefit their gardens as well. So take a moment to view them, subscribe there, and just enjoy the experience, a different experience with other garden enthusiasts throughout the country. And with that being said, I hope you found this video informative and educational, and if so, be sure to like it. And most importantly, by subscribing below, you'll be connected to this and all of our other educational gardening videos. Thanks again for watching, and happy gardening.